Welcome back to Power CEO's Truth Behind the Business. I'm here with our special guest, Brian Smith, founder of UGG Boots, author of Birth of a Brand, which, by the way, you can pick up on his website or Amazon. Welcome to the show, Brian.
Thank you, Jen. What a live wire.
I'm really excited about this because I've had the opportunity to see you speak multiple times, and I really want to dive into one of my favorite topics, which is resilience. And
Oh,
you
love it.
Yeah, you spoke about profitless prosperity and the importance of margins for sustainable growth. UGG's an international brand today. It didn't start that way. How did you navigate those early years of financial struggle? And what key lessons about fear and resilience can entrepreneurs today take from your journey so that they can ensure that profitable prosperity?
All right. Well, for the first 2 hours, I'll talk about. That's a lot of big topics. How did I get through that first couple of years? Because I thought because everyone in Australia wore sheepskin footwear and nobody in America did, I thought it would be an instant millionaire type product to bring into the US market. And it turned out that Americans didn't understand sheepskin, and it was a disaster. Me thinking it was going to, be so easy, and so I was shut out by all the shoe stores. They couldn't understand selling, wearing sheepskin in California, and the surf market was like a backstop because all of the California surfers who had been to Australia understood and brought back a whole bunch of pairs for their buddies. So within the surf community, it was well known. So I slowly started selling to the surf shops. Maybe I think it was 10 stores the first year and like about 35, 40 stores the next year. But they were just dribbling the product out. Nobody really understood what it was. And it took me like 4 years to figure out that nobody in the store could explain what an UGG boot was to a consumer, to a customer coming in. And when I realized that, I created a plan where I gave a free pair of boots to the store manager so that they could at least talk about it intellectually when the customers came in. And that was probably what turned the business around more than anything. And that took 4 years to develop. And so what I had to do in the meantime was have the perseverance or the resilience to keep weathering it. Now, the other thing you hit on right at the beginning was margin. I mean, these boots were extremely expensive for a surf shop because they're used to selling flip-flops and, thongs and things like that. And so I what's normal is you sell for, let's say, $20. The store would mark it up to $40. No, I would buy it for 20. I would sell it to the store for 40 and they would sell it for 80, right? Well, 80 was too much. So I had to chisel it back. So my margin was always squeezed and I never got more than 50% of a margin, which is not enough to run a business on. I got to tell you, 60, 70, 80%, you can start to run a business on that gross margin. And on the thin margins I had, it was never, ever going to work. But I didn't know that because even though I was an accountant, I had no idea about retail. And so for year after year after year, I kept selling the product and making zero money at the end of the day. And it wasn't until eventually one of my investors said, Brian, that's profitless prosperity. And once I started to raise the margins, you know what? The consumers didn't even care. They still bought it, And so I'd spent all those years making no money when I really should have been building the business. But
Well,
again,
I hear that you did that and it took you time because you learned in the trenches, right?
that's
and
correct.
and a lot of entrepreneurs are that way. I work with many and they really struggle to understand that concept. But what you said, and I just want to dive in a little deeper because I think it was such gold, was you couldn't sell, you shifted the marketing in order for it to sell because you had the volume. Once you have the volume, people know what it is and they're excited about it. It's a lot easier to raise your price point and for customers not to care. So can you talk about how you shifted the feeling and emotion behind that marketing, so that you could up the volume and come to this realization?
Yes, yes. the early ads I'd run were really, really bad. They were showing models on the beach. And after about 4 years of getting nowhere with the marketing, uh, I was lucky enough to have one of my customers, a retail customer, um, I was explaining why my marketing wasn't working, and he brought these young kids in who were my target market and said, "What do you guys think of Uggs?" And they all just went, "Oh, those Uggs are so fake. That those models can't surf. And when I realized that, I realized how I'd been wasting all my time for 3 or 4 years marketing this fake type, happiness. And when I used two young pro surfers, which were like influencers back in the day, the sales like went from 30,000 a year to 200,000 a year, purely because of the authenticity of the marketing. And once that kicked in, I realized, oh my God, that I started doubling in sales every year. And that was finally when I was able to say, shit, if they're this popular, I better put the price up. And it took like 6 or 7 years to finally get a really good gross margin, of 75, 80%.
Yeah, I mean, it's phenomenal how you did that. I love that shift. And it really was about connecting emotionally and authenticity. And, one of the challenges that a lot of CEOs and executives face is, how do I better connect my products emotionally with my target audience? What advice would you have for them?
Um, you've just got to figure a way to do it. The one thing I learned is you never advertise the product, right? You advertise the features or the benefits, and the more emotion you can get into whatever medium it is, whether it's video or whether it's a still shot on your website or whether it's on Instagram, the more you can get the consumer to want to be in that photograph, the
Mhm.
more successful the ad will be. So when I ran those two ads with the young pro surfers walking back and forth from the beach on these famous surf walks, right? Um, I had in the back of my mind felt that every little kid who reads Surfer magazine would just die to be in those ads, right? And if they had to buy a pair of these damn sheepskin boots to do so, they will. And that's the like. So if you were, for instance, creating a software that saves time, right? You do not run an ad with the back of an engineer at a computer screen, with a software, or you don't run the packaging. You show some guy in the Bahamas drinking a rum drink with all the time that he saved from your product. Does that make sense?
Absolutely immerse in that feeling and that emotion, because people buy on emotion.
Yeah, if they could, oh, I'd love to be in the Bahamas drinking that drink, or maybe I'll buy that software. Right? That's how you got to back it in.
I love it. Thank you for that. It's invaluable information. And I know we're drawing towards a close to our segment, but I want to ask you, if you had to do it over today with all the lessons that you've learned, what would you do differently, or how would you start differently moving forward?
Sure. The one thing, I mean, I would go ahead and make every blunder I've made, I would willingly do it all again. The one thing I would change is that I would hire somebody who understood finance,
Hmm.
right? Because I was always broke. And the reason I was broke, we talked about margins earlier, right? And being I was an ex-accountant. And my theory is, okay, we're broke. We just sold $1 million. We're broke. What's the answer? Oh, sell 2 million next year, right? And so we would get more product in, more expensive, more staff, more warehouse, sell 2 million, and we're twice as broke,
Hmm.
right? And it was because I didn't understand the margin and the financing aspect, right? I should have had a financial guy in saying, Brian, don't sell 2 million next year, sell 1.5, but let's raise the prices and we'll make twice as much money. And that's what I never brought in a financial expert when I should have. And if I had to do it all over again, that would be like the second hire would be someone who could help me with the financing.
Fantastic. Sage advice. Hire the right consultants to fill those gaps so you can grow faster, stronger, profitably, and actually take your business to the next level. Thank you so much for your advice, for everything that you shared, Brian. It was such a pleasure.
Hey, Jen, my pleasure. Thanks a lot.